So in less than 72 hours, President Trump will sit down with Vladimir Putin if everything holds steady at this point. I will be in Helsinki, Finland to report for you, but no one will be in the room where it happens except Putin and Trump and arguably their interpreters. So will the president put it to Putin? There is reason for doubt that he will. Why? 2 points. One, after learning about the latest indictment of 12 of Putin's people earlier this week, Trump still said the Putin meeting was going to be easy. Two, as recently as 2 weeks ago, Trump was still taking Putin's word over that of the U.S. intelligence community, something that he has done over and over.
I said, this Russia thing with Trump and Russia is a made-up story.
I believe that President Putin really feels, and he feels strongly, that he did not meddle in our election.
So, what will he do now? Let's bring that up with the man of the hour, once again, former Trump campaign advisor Roger Stone. Welcome to Primetime.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me.
All right. It's Friday night, so let's go easy to difficult on this interview. The easy work is that you are the man named, or not named, you are the man suggested in this indictment. I know you've said you don't think you are, but now, what's your answer?
Earlier today, before I had a chance to read this extensive document, I wasn't sure, but I certainly acknowledge that I was in touch with Trump campaign officials, and I have testified under oath to the House Intelligence Committee that I certainly had a 24-word exchange with the persona Guccifer 2.0 over Twitter direct messages. Any objective person who will read that exchange, which is included in the indictment, will see that based on content, context, and timing, it's benign, it's innocuous. So in retrospect, I think I probably am the person referred to.
Yeah, look, you put out the direct messages that you had with the person you now call a persona, Guccifer. And it is exactly what is in the indictment. I think we have it if we want to put it up on the screen for people. So clearly, the president, the government, in doing their investigating, is identifying these exact same communications. So there was no reason to ever deny it, Roger. It's you.
I never denied that it was me. I just didn't understand the earlier reference. But
well, you said, I don't think it's me because I didn't speak to high-ranking campaign officials, which when I read that, I found that hard to believe. But why fight it? Why not just say, yeah, this is me. I put out the direct messages. And they also say that there's no allegation of a crime.
Chris, I just did.
No, now, but you didn't initially. That's what I'm asking you.
No, much earlier today, before I had a chance to read the indictment, I misunderstood the reference. I think I've just clarified it.
Okay, let me ask you something else. Earlier, you said that you didn't think that Guccifer had anything to do with Russia and that the government had nothing to do with the actions of Guccifer. We now know from this indictment there's only one Guccifer, and it's a fugazi name for the Russian bad guys who are conspiring against the United States in its election. There is no other Guccifer. There is only one, and it's a composite of these bad guys named in the indictment. Will you own that now as a reality?
Well, an indictment, as you know, Chris, is an accusation. It's a charge by the government.
Yes.
It's not a conviction. Even Russian intelligence agents in the United States have a presumption of innocence until they're proven guilty. I agree with something that Congressman Nadler said in the previous program with Anderson Cooper. I would like to see the Russians extradite these intelligence agents so we can have a trial, so the DNC server can be examined, and so this charge can be proven or disproven. If that doesn't happen, then I'm hopeful in the civil suit that the DNC has filed against me and the Trump campaign and a dozen others that will have an opportunity to examine the server to determine whether these comprehensive charges are accurate.
The server is a dark road of suspicion about what they wanted to hide and why. Let's put that to the side. Let's deal with what's known. In all honesty,
no, wait a minute, Chris. I think the servers are absolutely necessary for the government to prove their case. I think it's perfectly reasonable.
Well, if you read this indictment today, Roger, they've got a ton of evidence linking down to the unit numbers of the GRU personnel who were doing the conspiring. Now, I know you can indict a ham sandwich. I get the whole deal. But this is part of a prosecution strategy, which I'm sure you've come across in the past, called name and shame. They know it's very unlikely that they get these people on U.S. territory so they can prosecute, unless the president demands it from Putin and uses it in trade for something maybe that Putin wants. Would you advise the president to do that?
Well, first of all, what the indictment doesn't have is any link to the Trump campaign.
But let's
or
put that
any
to the side.
That
I'm talking about Russian interference, and because it matters, because the president always says, Roger, it didn't happen.
No. Let's not put it to the side. Let's address it, and then I'll answer your question. There's nothing in this indictment that shows collusion or coordination or conspiracy with Donald Trump or the Trump campaign.
Right, but it's not the point of the indictment, so it doesn't say anything about me either. That's equally immaterial.
The president made it clear earlier in the week that he intended to bring up the question of hacking with Putin. I think he intends to do so. He should certainly do so.
Should he ask for the extradition of the 12 people named?
I would not be opposed to that because I would like these charges to be either proven or disproven.
Do you think he will?
I'm happy to say. I have no idea. He has not asked for my advice in this upcoming meeting.
But if he did, you'd tell him, ask for the 12, be very strong with Putin.
I wouldn't be opposed to it in any way. I would like these charges to be proven. Otherwise, they're a public relations device in which they prop up the investigation and they make allegations that are yet unproven in a court of law.
Well, they are unproven in a court of law, but you can't read this indictment, I don't think, in conjunction with the last indictment that we had of almost a dozen people and the other indictments that have come out and the intelligence community assessment of what happened and the Senate Intelligence Committee assessment of what happened, and not face the reality that the United States was hacked by Russia during the election. Will you accept that as fact?
No, I'm sorry. I think it is still unproven. There's an enormous amount of forensic evidence that points to a conclusion based on the download times that there was no hack and that the material, the alleged hacked material, was downloaded to some kind of a portable drive. I don't know. That's why I'd like to see a trial. The Nation magazine, in an extensive article based on the findings of Bill Binney and Ray McGovern.
These guys have had subpoena power and the complete tools of the United States government. They've been looking at it for months. They detail who did it, how they did it, how they conspired, the different types of malware they developed, the different ways they paid with cryptocurrency, fake servers to funnel the information, how they approached WikiLeaks, who they call Organization One, not exactly sure why, and they refer to you and how you were approached, how they developed DC Leaks, how they developed Guccifer. They lay it all out. Why fight the conclusion? Because you're in a very small group now. It's really you and the president.
Well, actually, I don't believe that because
I'm saying in the relevant corpus of people. I'm making you relevant here, Roger. I know my Twitter feed is awash with people who want to believe every word you are saying. But I'm saying of those who should know better, very few cling to this idea that Russia had nothing to do with it.
Chris, I must already be relevant, or you wouldn't have invited me to be here tonight.
100%.
So
point for you. Next.
So to address your question, there's no evidence in this indictment that I or anyone involved with Donald Trump received anything from the Russians or anyone who hacked the material and passed it to WikiLeaks.
True.
I don't know the people at DC Leaks. I don't think I've ever had any contact with them.
Right.
So in all honesty, for me, this indictment is exoneration because some of your colleagues in the media believe otherwise. And that is clearly not the case.
Well, I'll tell you what I'll say on this, given my understanding of these matters and processes. I don't know why they didn't name you in this indictment and charge you with things if they wanted to, if they thought they could make the case. I don't know why. I do think that you have a reasonable basis.
I know why, because
I do think you have a reasonable basis at this point to say if they didn't name me here, and they're obviously talking about me, maybe it's because they don't have anything on me. I think that's a reasonable position for you at this point, absent any further process by the investigators.
with all due respect, the reason I'm not charged in this indictment is because I received nothing from the defendants. I passed nothing on from the defendants, and my exchange with them, which is included, which any reasonable, objective person can read, is benign. It's innocent. There's no evidence of collusion or conspiracy or coordination.
I agree. I just don't know why you won't own that the person that you were, whatever, the persona, as they call it, that you were corresponding with, were the Russians. Why won't you own that?
Because I still don't know that it is true to a certainty.
Even though you never heard of any Lucifer before of any of this, and there's all this proof from the U.S. government that it was developed for this purpose, as stated in this indictment.
I think we've been round and round about this before. I think our intelligence agencies have been politicized, and I would like to see this proven in a court of law. I would admit that they have issued an extremely compelling and detailed indictment, but it's still an accusation. I said this on InfoWars earlier today. I would like to see a trial, and I'd like to see the DNC server. If we can't get it through a trial of the Russians, perhaps we'll get it in this civil trial, and we can get to the bottom of whether the DNC was hacked at all and who hacked it. I don't deny the government's made a compelling argument today, but that's still an accusation. It's not a conviction.
Do you think the U.S. president should use the same standard, that when his intelligence community and his intelligence officials and his Department of Justice all tell him, we know who did this, it's Russia, and the Senate Intelligence Committee says, we've reviewed it all, we're not InfoWars, but we're pretty sure they've got it right, that he should accept it instead of saying, nah, I go with Vlad. Vlad says he didn't do it, and he seems to really feel that that's the truth, so I'm open on it. You really think that's the right disposition for a president?
I don't think the president has ever said that, certainly not in those words.
When asked about whether or not he thinks they did it, he said, I spoke to Vladimir Putin on the phone. He says he didn't do it. And he left it at that. And then when he was asked about it again, he said, look, he really believes that they didn't have anything to do with it. Since when is that the basis of whether or not you're going to? So everything you've been told by your intelligence committee, the Department of Justice, the Senate Intelligence Committee, all of it you weigh against the word of a man on the phone who was put at the center of the plot. Would you do that?
I hope the president will raise this question when he meets with Putin, and I hope he will press it on him. We have certainly interfered in Russian elections. We spent millions of dollars electing Boris Yeltsin.
But what does that have to do with what they did
in the Israeli elections? Well, because it is kind of hypocritical to say,
but then he could say that.
He could interfere in foreign elections.
Fair point. He could have said, Russia did it. I believe everybody else who's telling me this, who's in the business of knowing, which I am not. But we've done it too, so I've decided not to prioritize it. He's never said that. He said it a witch hunt, and we know why. He conflates what you're doing a little bit tonight, Roger, with all due respect, which is if it's about him, he wants this all dead. So there's no collusion. It's not about me. I did nothing wrong. Maybe so. Let's see what the probe winds up with. But there's a whole separate reality, which is they did this. An inimical state did this many different ways with lots of money and lots of intentionality, including trying to get into electoral results and trying to manipulate systems. That matters too, even if it has nothing to do with Trump, does it not?
Yes, it matters, although it remains to be seen whether their efforts in this country were effective or whether they were
They were clearly effective. Look at us. We question each other at every
even,
turn. We question the election. We question what we're doing left and right. Who's telling the truth? Who isn't?
We were doing that. We were doing that before the election. We were highly polarized before the election.
I wish that were true, but it's not. Final point.
Again, no evidence pertaining to connecting this to the Trump campaign in any way.
Nobody suggested otherwise.
They did, and if this is proven, even Mr. Rosenstein said today in his comments, there's no evidence that they effected the outcome of the election.
Nobody suggested otherwise. Silence. Roger, what I'm saying is, if they meddled in the election, that's enough. Their efforts are enough. You have to stop it. You have to speak truth to power. That's the role of a president. That's why I think it matters. That's why I wanted you on tonight, so that you could clear up your role in terms of this indictment and say what you think Trump should do. And I appreciate you doing that.
I think I have done both of those things, Chris. Thank you.